Hello and welcome to a very interesting cover story face-off. We have with us Dr. Swami, BJP leader and someone who's known to speak his mind, and Professor Madhav Narapat, editorial director of the ITV network, and also someone who's known to speak his mind. The question here is, are the two minds going to agree today or not? We're going to be discussing Brics versus Quad. Where should India's loyalties lie? Because increasingly, Russia, and China have been questioning India's participation in the Quad. The Quad, as you know, was made to actually counter Chinese aggression in the Indo-Pacific. The BRICS is more of an economic bloc to help underdeveloped countries and could build up to be a very sustainable factor in the region. So India now has to take a call. It's been walking both sides, but now with the Ukraine versus Russia face-off happening, India has to now decide. So I have both sides joining me. I'll begin with you, Dr. Swami. Where should India be in terms of BRICS versus Quad? I think I suspect I know where your suggestion
is. Well, I would say that the criteria by which I have come to the conclusion that we have only one option worth it, and that is to be part of Quad. And that is based on a kind of a four-dimensional analysis, which I won't go into it because it'll take a lot of time. But I will state that I have assessed what India's objectives should be today in the world, then what our priorities should be, and then what should be our strategic perceptions, and finally the kind of resource mobilization that we would need in any such situation. So I won't make it an academic lecture, but I would like to say these are the four pillars on which I have come to that conclusion. Now, you have very correctly ruled out being both. According to me, it's a very sound thing because there are contradictions. And I can mention those contradictions later, but this is an opening statement. So I'll just say there are contradictions, and there's no question of standing alone. That neither we are not in that position today. We can be in the position later on. We got the potential for it. But so it is a choice between BRICS and Quad, and in my opinion, we should choose Quad for a number of reasons. Number one, Quad is constituted of nations which are truly democratic. They practice democracies, they hold elections, fair elections, or relatively fair elections, and they select leaderships and they change. For instance, in Australia, you had a very pro-Chinese prime minister. He has been defeated. And so they have also agreed to join the Quad. Now, earlier on, they had walked out of it, actually, even though they had a military alliance with the United States. So first reason why I am in favor of joining the Quad is these are all democratic nations. One is Japan, the other is Australia, third is the United States, and fourth is ours. So this is a very important reason for it. The second one is that the BRICS has China in it. And I don't know whether the Prime Minister feels it this way and Mr. Narapat feels it this way, but the Chinese had 18 one-to-one meetings with between Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi. And yet, they coolly cross what is called the line of actual control. Now, line of actual control, I was personally involved at the time of Narasimha Rao, so I know the circumstances in which it was decided. It's a mutually agreed line in which we said, situation as it is remains there, then we'll start now negotiations. So Aksai Chin is a part of India, but today it is in the control of China. They have crossed that line and crossed into it and have taken, according to me, 4,000 square kilometers of our land in Depsang, and it's a very strategic area. And now they are doing on Pangong Lake and all kinds of things.
But they're not behaving as colleagues should.
Yes, so they have not in that they betrayed you. So they had 18 one-to-one meetings I don't know what was discussed in that. Maybe Narapat knows. So this is the second part. Third thing is Malacca Strait is a very strategic thing. On one side is Indonesia, and I would strongly recommend the Americans to bring in Indonesia also into this quad. And the other side is India, that is Andaman and Nicobar. And so no ship can go through that if both of us decide to block it. And 90% of the international trade of on sea, by sea of China comes through Malacca Strait. Look at the power we have. So therefore, I would say the Indian Ocean factor, and that's why this is called Indo-Pacific Alliance, and it's on that basis it has been done. So concluding, I will say, what is the advantage of being BRICS? It is dominated by two communist countries, two very faraway countries, which have no real interest here, South Africa and Brazil. Okay, and I believe, and I am convinced, and many of the Indian foreign secretaries who have written books are saying this, Russia is a junior partner of China. There's nothing that Russia will do which the Chinese will, without Chinese approval. So we are really a country which is now having China having illegally crossed into our country and taken over our land, and is supporting Pakistan fully. They're on the opposite sides on most international issues with us, and another country which is a democracy. Maybe one American administration was nasty to us, but the next one need not be. So I feel that all the factors of demand, of objective priorities, strategy, money, weapon systems, all this is in favor of being in Quad.
Essentially, I think it's boiling down to choosing between US and China. But Professor Narapat, your take on where we should be.
Right.
Well, I'd like to say that Dr. Swami, as always, is very erudite and cogent in his conclusions. But perhaps he'll pardon me if I believe that one has to be in both. India has to be in both Quad as well as BRICS. Now, assuming that we leave BRICS, Japan, Australia, and the US will be overjoyed. Let's say we leave the Quad. Well, then Russia and China would be overjoyed. There's no question about it. They'll both be very happy. So, but the fact of the matter is that I also agree with Dr. Swami. So far as the Chinese are concerned, frankly, wherever they are involved, in every institution, they will try and see to it that they have to get the advantage from it and deny whatever advantage India will be getting from that. The same thing applies in China's relations with South Africa, with Brazil, and also with Russia. Dr. Swami was saying a junior partner. In a sense, the Chinese are now a parasite on Russia. They are now trying to basically take over Siberia through demographic transition, through changes, and through economic muscle. And they are, as Dr. Swami correctly said, they're trying to make Russia not even a junior, but a subsidiary power. I mean, somewhere on the lines of what Pakistan is today, thanks to the Pakistan military. I agree with all that. But having said that, allow me to point out that the Chinese war machine is being kept afloat essentially by the United States and the huge deficits that that country is running with China. The country that is running the second highest deficits with China is the Republic of India. I think this, if you look at the last 12 months or so, it was, I think, well in excess of 70 billion. That is the surplus that China has made out of trade with India. And frankly, this is ridiculous. We have so much that we can give to China, but the Chinese are blocking. And we have so much that we need not buy from China if we had been involved in better import substitution. And we are not into that. But so the point is, whether it's Australia, for example, China is its biggest buyer of iron ore and coal and other materials. Japan, China is a huge market for Japanese companies. And so India is a dumping ground for Chinese goods. But for Australia, for Japan, the United States is also a dumping ground for Chinese goods. But Australia and Japan are profiting significantly from China. So they are not blocking their trade with China. Both are continuing. And as far as Brics is concerned, I understand about China, but what about South Africa? What about Brazil? And also, what about Russia? The reality is, it's not set in stone that Russia is going to be, constantly preyed on by China for all time to come. And certainly, for example, in certain situations, for example, in a conflict involving India, I would expect, and I would certainly expect, that the Russians would be neutral rather than the Chinese side. If they are on the Chinese side, then I would say Dr. Swami will have been proved right completely, but we'll have to wait and see as and when that conflict develops. So I'd only like to say, Priya, that given the uncertain state of play in the world, given the interlinkages between different countries, including countries that are supposed to be hostile to each other. I mean, United States and India are the largest, producers of surplus for China. And neither of us is a country friendly to China. We are both staunch members of the Quad. But, in that kind of a complex world, I think it's very important to remain in both and see where the drift of events takes us. And at the end of that, when there are more defining moments, take a call on that, as Dr. Swami is suggesting.
But Swami, why can't we stay in both sides? Even, as we are doing even in the Ukraine and Russia, people are saying that India could then emerge as a peacemaker and as someone who can, balance all sides.
Well, in Panchatantra, which is one of our holy books of stories, there is a description of the status of the bat. There was a war between the birds and the animals, and the bat went to the bird side and said, I fly like you, so I'm with you, and you can count me in. And the birds were very happy. Then they went to the animals and said, I like to look at a rat. I'm an animal, and therefore I'm with you. And then when the battle took place, bats are enjoying life, being members of both. And after they reached a ceasefire, this is all there in the Panchatantra. They said, where is the bat? And they said, no, he was with us, but he is not. He said, what? He was with you? He was with us. He is pledged. I hope nothing has happened to him. Let's go look for him. And that is why the bat never comes out during daylight, because both of them are coming, looking for them. And they got so scared that they're only living in darkness.
Okay, hold that thought. I'm going to take a break. We'll come back and get Dr. Swami's punchline.
Yeah. Okay.
But after a quick break. Hello and welcome back to a very interesting conversation between Dr. Subramanian Swami and Professor Madhav Narapat. We are discussing Brics versus Quads and can India actually stay in both formations? Now, Dr. Swami.
See, Narapat is an established intellectual. And intellectuals' problem is they try to fudge everything. And so what he's talking about, the United States dealing with having trade with China. India is also having, why not? That's not the issue. China is on the border. I am not expecting the United States to send troops to help us. I just want their superior weapons. In S-400, all the delivery has been delayed because the Chinese have to get first preference. And there is a concern amongst the Americans that if you take your weapons from the Russians like the S-400, the Chinese electronics are there, and we therefore will not trust you. I only want weapons from the United States. Fighting China, and I am not into the grand design of liberating Taiwan and Tibet and all, nothing. Those are, we have signed treaties with the Chinese on it. We'll honor it till they, of course, break it, make a force us to break it. But the fact is, we are only concerned with our territory. What did the Russians do when the Chinese crossed? There was a IFS officer who was posted in Ladakh. She gave us a report on 16th of April 2020 that the Chinese have crossed into Depsang and they're coming in a big way to take it over. And our government asked the Russians. In fact, you may remember our earlier meetings were all held in Moscow. I mean, I don't know what this slavery is all due to. You could have met in Beijing or you could have called them to Delhi. But anyway, we met in Moscow. And the Russians told us, no, they are doing only field operations. This is a rehearsal and not to be taken seriously, which was totally wrong. Did they do it deliberately, or they are so stupid that they are not worthy of being an ally? So I don't know. So anyway, whereas the Russians openly said the Chinese have aggressed and crossed the line of actual control, which was mutually agreed, and they should pull back, never, not even once. So it is a junior partner, and therefore they won't. And so why should we be part of an organization where the Chinese are going to call the shots, and especially because the other two are far away and they have no great love for India. They have not shown in the United Nations or anywhere a great love for India. So our national interest is the question. The Americans have very good weapons and they can help us. In 1962, when Jawaharlal Nehru collapsed and the Russians said, what did the Soviet Union say? Khrushchev said, China is our brother. You are our friend. We have to have differential approaches to both of you. And this is there in documented. I can produce it. It's there in my book, which has now got the Kalinga Award and all that, where I've reproduced it. So the Russians have at no stage, earlier on because of communism, and now because of the fact that the Russians depend on them, can come to help you if you have a war with China. The United States, I don't need their soldiers. I don't need anything else. I just want their weapon system. I want their F-35. I want their superior howitzer guns and so on. And that the Americans are absolutely ready if you are ready to fight the Chinese.
Professor, the Russians aren't going to choose us over China, says Dr. Swami.
Look, the reality is that Russia will certainly not choose us over China. The best case expectation is that they will remain neutral in the way we have remained neutral in what is happening between NATO and Russia on the issue of Ukraine. And I fully agree with Dr. Swami that American weapons are absolutely necessary in India. But there's a small problem. And that small problem is something called the dollar. Now, Donald Trump, for example, Donald Trump's idea about true love was basically, so long as you had dollar signs, it was true love. The more dollars that you showed, the more in love you were. And the reality of the situation is that, for example, THAAD, I have been arguing for many, many years that India should go in for THAAD, and very importantly, that America should give India THAAD because it will secure America's own position in the Indo-Pacific, instead of which successive administrations have said, you're not really a poor country. We think you're a rich country. It's like Ursula von der Leyen, who believes that India is a rich country. And so you can make sacrifices that we in poor Germany cannot. But the fact of the matter is, I'm not sure they're offering us THAAD, but if they're offering us at extortionate prices. We are paying through our nose for American equipment that ought to be coming free of cost. We are a much more important theater than Ukraine ever will be to the United States. Lend-lease is something, Dr. Swami would have probably tracked that. For about 25 years, I have been arguing that US should launch a lend-lease program with India. At that point in time, there were some friendly voices in the Pentagon to that idea. A bit of floating junk, the USS Trenton was handed over to India, and India refurbished it and made it usable as the Jalashwa. But the fact is that was a one-off. Where is the lend-lease for India? All these congressmen and senators and media are rushing over each other to give help to Ukraine, lend-lease, free weapons, you name it. Biden is just now going in for a $30 billion package on top of the other money that he has given. He's forgotten about the poor in America. He's forgotten about the African-American community that elected him. His entire focus is on Ukraine. I mean, they are wonderful people. The Ukrainians are charming, wonderful people. But the fact is, they're a secondary factor. And the Americans are lavishing money on Ukraine in a way that they have never done, in 1/100th of the way on India. So my point is, Dr. Swami, yes, I want American weapons. I don't want American weapons that will make all the American companies hyper rich. They're already super, super rich thanks to this war. They'll become hyper rich if India were to separate from Russia and buy from them. They'll immediately mark up all their prices. So that is the point that I'm trying to make. Okay. Lend-lease, Dr. Swami, I argued for Lend-lease 25 years ago that the United States should give Lend-lease to India because we are the defense in the Indo-Pacific. And as for THAD, I argued for THAD when everybody was saying, what are you talking about? It has to be S-400. I've argued against S-400. I want us to buy Russian oil, Russian gas, Russian resources as cheaply as we can get. Forget about Joe Biden, poor fellow. He doesn't know whether he's coming or going or running in circles, but forget about him. But we should downsize our purchase of Russian equipment. But the fact is, so far, Joe Biden is very tight-fisted when it comes to India. And when the Indo-Pacific, he's so concentrating on Ukraine. He's so concentrating on the beautiful people of Ukraine. He's forgotten about, if I may say so, the far more beautiful people and the far more numerous beautiful people of India. He's forgotten about the Indo-Pacific. He's concentrating the Atlantic. And there he's joined by his European partners. They're into this collective delusion that Ukraine is the center point of the world.
Let me quickly get last words in because we are going to get out of time. We have one of the bold and beautiful persons sitting here, Dr. Swami. Why is the US?
I would say that the problem with people like Narapat is they don't know how to negotiate with the Americans. I've had some experience negotiating with them when Chandrasekhar was Prime Minister and a bit when Narasimha Rao was there. I held a cabinet rank position with him also. And the Americans are very clear on give and take. When Chandrasekhar took office and all of us became ministers, he first asked one of his ministers who was dealing with the issues to try and get some money out of the Americans. And he failed. The Americans took a hard line. When it came, then he asked me, you know America, you live there, you have done this, that, and all that, please do something. I said, you come at a late stage, but I'll try. Luckily for me, the Americans wanted at that time for the Gulf War I, for their planes to fly from Philippines to Saudi Arabia, and they wanted to refuel in India, not in Pakistan. And they had made a proposal. So I took that and I said, I am willing to persuade the Prime Minister to agree if you give me $2 billion, which is about $20 billion today, $2 billion from the IMF. I don't want it from you. I want it from the IMF, but on concessional terms. The Americans immediately complied. So I have my view is that the Americans should not get the impression we want something for nothing, or that we are stupid enough to give something for nothing. It's a pure give and take. They are commercially minded. Yes, of course, they are booming economy because they are commercially minded people. So if you know how to deal with them, and this rupee trade is the worst thing that you can have. You are empowering people. When I was Commerce Minister, people used to do rupee trade on rice, and they were exporting Parmal rice and putting it the tag for basmati rice, and the difference was being shared by KGB and Indian politicians, whose names the list I have got even today. So there's no great. I would say that it's against our national interest to deal in rupee trade with any country. It should be on foreign exchange, and therefore I would say know how to negotiate with the Americans. Otherwise, continue to remain a slave that you have been in the so-called non-aligned world.
Last 1 minute, Professor Narapat. The Americans will help, but you must know how to ask them, says Dr. Swami.
Well, look, I would agree that the Americans are the only partners that India has got, significant partners. And the Indo-Pacific is the theater of importance. India is essential to the United States. United States is essential to India. But the reality of the situation is, as Nelson Mandela says, you can't tell me that if I'm a friend of yours, I should accept all your friends as my friends and your enemies as my enemies. Ukraine is a sideshow. Russia is a sideshow compared to China. The focus has got to be on China. And for that, Joe Biden has got to understand it's India, absolutely India. So if he's lavishing this much on Ukraine, he should be lavishing 5 times more on India instead of nothing on India.
One line from me, one line. Shame on Russia for taking on a defenseless Ukraine. It's the biggest shame in our international history.
And I know Professor will has his view on that, but I'm going to call you back for another show on that topic. We did one already, but I don't mind. I would love to have you both back again.
Latest.
But for now, thank you. This has been a very interesting conversation. Thank you both very much for this.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.